Comes Billy Cundiff to tie this game and in all likelihood send it to overtime. The last 2 years, 16 of 16 in the fourth quarter on field goals, 32 yards to tie it. And the kick, look out, it's no good, it's no good.
It was at this very moment when the Baltimore Ravens knew they needed a new kicker. And this wasn't just any regular game. A made field goal here, and that could have sent the Ravens to the Super Bowl. Instead, their season ended, all because of a 32-yard shanked field goal. In fairness to Billy Cundiff, the man who missed that field goal, it wasn't like he was this awful kicker. Hell, he even made the first team All-Pro in 2010, just 1 year prior. He definitely had his good moments. But sadly for Cundiff and many other kickers that came before him and after him, kickers aren't always remembered for the best reasons. Mention Nate Kading to a Chargers fan or Scott Norwood to a Bills fan, and they may get really upset at you. In the 2012 draft, there were 4 kickers who actually got drafted: Randy Bullock, Greg Zuerlein, Blair Walsh, and John Potter. Ironically though, the man we'll be talking about today actually went undrafted. After 4 years at Texas and making 83% of his field goal attempts and a perfect 74 for 74 on extra points, it still was not enough to get drafted for Justin Tucker. Even after Tucker posted a video of himself making 10 straight field goals, running down to get his own makes, and saying 2 simple words after the video:
"Pick me."
As we sit here 12 years later, I think it's fair to say that all 32 teams regret not drafting this guy. And I say all 32 because technically the Ravens did not draft him. It took almost a full month after the draft for Tucker to land on an NFL roster, but he finally got signed by the Baltimore Ravens. He may have been making less than $500,000 per year with no guaranteed money, but at least now he had a shot. In the 2011 training camp, Tucker would have to compete with the man who cost the Ravens their season the year prior, and that's Billy Cundiff. Well, maybe it's not fair to pin it all on Cundiff. I mean, you know, Lee Evans may have caught that ball. Anyway, the battle between both kickers in the preseason was a really good battle. Both guys kicked really well, but the Ravens sided with youth, choosing Tucker over Cundiff to make the final roster. In the preseason, Tucker went 2 of 2 on his field goal attempts, and one of them from 53 yards. He also went 6 for 6 on extra points, but these were the days when the point after attempt was a lot shorter. Tucker's rookie season went about as well as it could, making 90% of his kicks, perfect on extra points, perfect in the playoffs, and they won the Super Bowl. Tucker's 90.9% conversion rate on field goals is still top 5 in NFL history for all rookie kickers. At that time, he was 3rd all time, only trailing fellow rookie Blair Walsh, who made 92.1% of his field goal attempts as a rookie, and Richie Cunningham, who made 91.1% in 1997. Last season though, Brandon Aubrey, the Cowboys kicker, broke the rookie record for highest field goal percentage at 94.7%. And if you enjoy NFL videos on kickers, feel free to check out my Brandon Aubrey video, which I made a couple months ago. Not only was Tucker great as a rookie, but he was clutch too. He hit a game-winning field goal versus New England in week 3 that we think went in, but the replacement refs said yes. He made 2 huge kicks versus the Chargers in week 13, and more importantly, made the kick that sent the Ravens to the AFC Championship game. Year 2 in 2013 is where Tucker really put the rest of the kickers in the league on notice. He led the league with 38 made field goals, made 92% of his kicks, which was an improvement from his great rookie season, and made the first team All-Pro for the first time in his career. The crazy part about year 2 for Tucker was in week 2 he missed 2 field goals versus the Cleveland Browns, meaning that from week 3 on, Tucker converted 36 of his 37 field goal attempts, putting him at 97%. It felt like in week 15 at Detroit is when people really started to realize how insanely good this guy really was. Tucker was 5 for 5 on the night, having accounted for all 15 of the Ravens' points. With 43 seconds left and the game on the line, Tucker was sent out for a chance to take the lead. A make here would not only make him 6 for 6 on the night, and still the only man to score for the Ravens that night, but this was also for an NFL record. Now it's a pretty unique record, but no kicker to that point had ever made a field goal from 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60 in the same game. Tucker's game-winning field goal attempt was measured at 61 yards, which would give him this record. He lined up from the far side of the Lions logo and barely, and I mean just barely, snuck it inside the right upright for the lead. Baltimore went on to win the game, and this was a must-win game for them, so this was definitely a massive kick at the time. Sadly though, the Baltimore Ravens fell short of the playoffs that year, but not at the fault of Justin Tucker. 2014 and 2015 were kind of down years for Tucker Tucker's standards, but still had plenty of bright moments. In 2015, on 2 separate occasions, Tucker made a game-winning and a game-tying field goal in the same game. Despite the consecutive quote-unquote down years though, Tucker entered 2016 as the second most accurate kicker of all time. He did go on to bounce back in 2016, which went on to be one of the best seasons of his entire career. In that summer, Baltimore signed him to a 4-year, $16.8 million extension. This extension made him the second highest paid kicker in the league, only trailing Stephen Gostkowski. Tucker made a staggering 97% of his kicks that season, going 38 for 39. He made a 54-yard game winner versus the Jags in Week 3 and was named AFC Special Teams Player of the Month in September. Later in the season versus the Bengals, Tucker made 4 field goals and 3 of them over 50 yards. This was that wacky game where the Ravens found a loophole and held everybody on the final play to get the win, but hey, a win's a win. In Week 15 versus Philly, in very harsh conditions I may add, Tucker tied an NFL record by making his 10th field goal on the year of over 50 yards, which definitely earned some praise from his head coach John Harbaugh. Tucker was flirting with a perfect kicking season, but had a field goal blocked in Week 14 versus the Patriots. So while he technically had 1 miss, Tucker never actually missed a kick during the 2016 season, at least by his own doing. He made the Pro Bowl that year and was first team All-Pro for the second time in his career. Tucker's 97.4% conversion rate on field goals that year was the highest for any kicker with at least 25 attempts since 2003, which was Mike Vanderjagt. It was nearly impossible to have a better year in 2017, but Tucker still had a ridiculous year. He went 34 for 37 on field goals, putting him at 91%, and still remained perfect on extra point attempts throughout his career. To this point, Tucker was a perfect 205 for 205 on extra points. During the first 3 years of Tucker's career, the NFL still had the short extra point try, but beginning in 2015, the NFL moved the extra point attempts back from 20 yards out to 33 yards out. In 2014, a year before the rule change, teams made 99.3% of their extra point attempts, but a year later in 2015, after the rule change, that dropped to 94.2%. Still a very high probability, but no longer automatic, unless your name was Justin Tucker. It took Tucker a full 3.5 seasons to miss an extra point after the rule change. From the start of 2015 through halfway through 2018, Tucker made 112 consecutive extra point tries from 33 yards out. He had never missed an extra point in high school, college, nor the NFL, well until now. And as you would expect, Tucker was the last kicker who kicked from that point from 2015 to 2018 to finally miss an extra point. And sadly for him, the first time it happened was the worst time it could have happened. With the game on the line, the ball somehow caught a gust of wind or something and just somehow went far right. Like, why couldn't this happen earlier in the game or at some other point in the season? Like, why now? Tucker's 2018 season definitely had some clutch kicks and some big games, but once again he broke another NFL record. He became the first player in NFL history with 6 seasons of over 30 field goals made. At this point, Tucker had become the most accurate kicker in NFL history, making 90.1% of his field goals through his first 7 seasons. 2019 would only up that percentage as Tucker made 96% of his attempts that year. This was the season where Lamar Jackson won MVP and the Ravens offense scored a record amount of touchdowns. So for Tucker, field goals were not really needed as much that season. Although he was only limited to 29 attempts, Tucker made 28 of them. After that season, the NFL put together an all-decade team for the 2010s, and to the surprise of no one, Tucker made that list. 2020 wasn't Tucker's best season, but the overall numbers still looked pretty good, converting 89% of his kicks and only 1 missed extra point. 2 of his 3 misses that year were from 55 and 61, so it wasn't like they were some high percentage kicks. In the playoffs though, Tucker had a rough day, missing his first 2 kicks in Buffalo. The win was absolutely a factor, and more so the announcer jinx by Al Michaels. The Ravens did not find the end zone in that game, losing 17-3 in the divisional round, so it's tough to solely put that game on Tucker. 2021 was one of Tucker's more elite seasons and arguably his best. And who better to hold the record for the longest kick in NFL history than the man who will probably go down as the greatest kicker of all time. It was now 8 years since Tucker had that masterful performance in Detroit where he went 6 for 6, including that 61-yard game winner. In 2021, the Ravens were back in Detroit, and somehow, someway, Tucker found a way to one-up that performance from 2013. With a minute left, Baltimore had the ball trying to get into field goal range, just down by 1 point. The best they could do was barely cross midfield and get down to the Lions' 48-yard line. They already got there by converting a 4th and 19, so this drive already foreshadowed some magic. In most cases at at the 48-yard line, this is a chance for a Hail Mary as time expires, but not when you have Justin Tucker. John Harbaugh sent him out for what was a 66-yard field goal attempt. Keep in mind that at that time, the longest field goal made in NFL history was 64 yards set by Matt Prater. Not only were the stakes much lower for Prater as he made his kick right before halftime, but he also had the luxury of kicking in the thin air at Denver. In a dome in Detroit, there was going to be no help here. When the kick first left Tucker's foot, you can tell it was definitely on target. The question was, would it have the distance? From the broadcast view and most of us watching at home, the kick looked short as the ball bounced off the bottom of the goalpost and popped up. Even the fans in Detroit threw their hands up, having thought the kick was short as well. And I remember watching this game live on Red Zone thinking the same thing, thinking, damn, he was just inches away from making the longest kick in the league's history, with the game on the line, by the way. The kick that looked short somehow, some way, popped straight in the air and landed right in front of the kicking net, and Tucker converted the longest kick in NFL history, a game winner as time expired. It does not get much better than that. In 2021, Tucker led the NFL in field goal percentage and of course had the longest kick on the season, and still of all time. He made every extra point that season as well. Tucker made the NFL's top 100 list in 2022, which is extremely rare for a kicker. The only kicker I found that made the list prior was Adam Vinatieri in 2015. Aside from that, you're really not going to see many kickers on that list. In week 5 of 2022, he broke another pretty cool record. His game winner versus the Bengals marked the 61st kick in a row made by Tucker in fourth quarters. This is still the longest streak of fourth quarter field goal attempts without a miss, and 27 of those 61 consecutive field goals were over 40 yards. Truly incredible. In week 12, he was given a chance to try and break his own record with a 67-yard attempt at Jacksonville. The game was also on the line here, but unfortunately this time it fell a bit short. But still, the kick was definitely online. For some reason, it felt like he was going to make it, which is more of a testament to show how good Tucker's been in these clutch moments. In week 14 at Pittsburgh, Tucker passed Matt Stover for number 1 on the Ravens all-time scoring list. Stover kicked for Baltimore from 1996 to 2008 and was a vital part of their 2000 Super Bowl winning team. 2022 and 2023 were not the most efficient seasons for Tucker, only making 86% of his kicks in both years combined, which for most kickers is a fine year, but well below his career average of 90%. As we sit here today, Tucker is 34 years old and about to enter his 13th season. Right now, he's still number 1 in NFL history in field goal percentage and the only kicker north of 90%. He does have some current kickers right on his tail, including Harrison Butker and Eddie Pinheiro of all people, but hopefully by the time his career is over, Tucker will have a comfortable lead. In terms of the most field goals made of all time, he still has a ways to go. Adam Vinatieri sits number 1 of all time, having made 599 career field goals, and Tucker is still well behind at 395. If Tucker stays on this current pace and makes about 32 to 33 field goals per season, it'll take a little over 6 seasons to break that all-time record. Considering how Tucker takes care of himself and still kicking at such a high level, I do think Tucker will be the all-time field goal leader by the time he hangs up the cleats. Some may speculate that he's on the decline, and while some numbers may back that up, I wholeheartedly disagree. I still think Tucker has some really good football left in him, and the longest tenured Raven will no doubt end up in the Hall of Fame one day, and still has a chance to shatter every kicking record that exists by the time he's done playing. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll talk to you guys next time.